Good morning. I know we all stayed up late last night, but we all got cold showers, so we're awake, I guess. Thank you for either one. Thank you for coming this early. My name is Roger Black, and I am going to try to do a slightly different session than we've been doing, in the sense of getting everybody involved faster, asking you to go ahead and interject a question. You can come up to the mic or just yell. They're recording, so they like you to use the mic. The other recording request is to turn off cell phones, because there's interference that's you can hear, but they can hear more of. So that would be great if you could do that. And so I am a designer. I'm not wearing my yellow wristband. I'm also not wearing my lavender triangle. There are a number of other tattoos that I don't have. The thing is that I don't really like that idea of branding ourselves or tagging ourselves that way, because I think that's the problem with the community on the internet now, online media in general, that we are into too many different camps, and the editors hate the designers, and the designers hate the techies, or whatever, and we all hate the ad salespeople. Or vice versa, and that's not right. It's not going to work. There's too much change and movement happening for us to divide up. It's essential that the developers get as much content in their blood, and as much culture, and as much business sense as they can. And similarly, the designers have to learn as much code and as much, at least basic understanding of what these new platforms are offering. And the business people have to get hip to the dynamic changes that are going on. And I don't know if any of us is smart enough to move quickly enough during this time. So people are going to be pushed off the sides. Some of us that's already happened once or twice, and we've regrouped. Microsoft is pretty good at that. I'm pretty excited about the opportunities with WPF and Silverlight. And so I asked two friends to join me this morning, and their bios have been running back and forth. This is Tom Bodkin, who is an assistant managing editor of the New York Times, which essentially puts you at cardinal level if you were in the Vatican. He's on the masthead, and that's a fairly big deal. And I don't know, but he's a designer, so he'll never become Pope.
I don't want to be Pope.
Tom was the designer that really thought through the New York Times reader. And he's going to talk a little bit about that and what the direction is going forward. I had a small role in that at the very beginning of just doing some sketches for Microsoft to think about what the typography and what are the possibilities were using WPF for the reader. And then we have Philippe Fortes, who is going to talk about a new project that he's been working on actually with me, where we take some of the lessons learned, taking media onto the WPF platform and then seeing what we can do with it. So I'm going to interject or ask questions of these guys as they do their little presentations. Same with you. If you have something that we're leaving out or something that you think is really essential, please go ahead and interject. But then let's go for it. Tom, it's yours.
So as Roger said, I was deeply involved in the New York Times Reader project. How many of you have actually downloaded the reader and used it? So it's quite a few. About half. That's pretty good. And I found this really a pretty major turning point for me, and I hope for the industry. It's going to change my way of thinking about print and digital. And it's what happened for me is that, and I guess we've been working on this project for about a year and a half. It was in beta testing for about the past 6 months, and now it's live. And I've been using it, pretty steadily, through that period for about a year. And I'm a print guy. I've been a print designer for about 35 years. And the web has always frustrated me because of its technical limitations, which hopefully will change. But in the past and currently, it's still fairly limited from a design standpoint. it doesn't really lend itself to presenting a publication in a traditional sense. It's an incredible database resource, but in terms of the sort of narrative experience of reading a publication, it's really not, it's not so good at that. It's not really designed for that. And I've kind of been worried about what's the future of publications in a world in which printing presses becomes impractical. And for the first time, there's been sort of a convergence of software and hardware development. Software, mainly being for me WPF, and the hardware being portable touchscreen devices. And this convergence has provided a platform for something that I really think can create a digital publication for the first time. And in terms of the software, WPF, it gives the features that it offers in terms of sophisticated typography and composition, setting context, the rich media, pagination instead of scrolling, flowing layouts. All of this is sort of closer, gives you tools to get much closer to the print experience, but still maintaining all of the digital benefits that you have in terms of interaction and animation and that kind of stuff. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. And then in terms of hardware, and I actually think the hardware is as important as the software, and I think to some degree the success of the Times Reader and products like this may be somewhat delayed until the use of portable hardware becomes more prevalent. I'm using a Fujitsu tablet.
Like
actually,
that one.
Do we have one here? I have one all hooked up. That's a big tablet.
You have a
Kevin,
little
can you hold
one?
up your tablet?
You have the baby one?
Yeah, Kevin's got a baby in the back. Kevin has a baby one, and I find that a wonderful machine, really kind of a perfect, compromise in terms of size and lightness.
Dead.
And I think that makes a huge difference in terms of readability and the comfort of readability and the sort of experience of a periodical. The screen anchored to your desk is not something that's real convenient to or comfortable to sit and read long-form journalism or to have this sort of narrative experience. This is to hold on my crap here. This is a big touchscreen tablet machine. I find it too big.
Too heavy.
It's too heavy. The little one's about, 2 pounds.
You also needed like sidecar for your batteries.
Yeah, and I think, but the problem is, the tablets have not really caught on yet. I think they will. They need to get a little bit cheaper. They're still too expensive. They need to get, still a little lighter, and battery life has to be increased a little. But, that's going to happen, obviously. And, relatively soon, I think. And at that point, people will start buying them instead of laptops, I believe. The idea of having a dedicated machine that is only a reader, Sony Reader, for example, I'm not sure that's the future, but I think having a machine that performs all the functions you want, which for me, the Fujitsu is now, that's my laptop now, carried everywhere. It has a keyboard. It's slightly smaller than a normal keyboard, but perfectly fine for composing anything you want. And so, it's a fully loaded PC. So for me, it's email and internet and everything. Plus, it's my reader, and I can load the New York Times on it. The way the reader works, New York Times Reader, is you download basically from the website the entire contents of the paper in about, takes about a minute during weekdays, a little longer on Sundays. And once you have it, it's resides on your hard drive, and it's totally portable. You don't need a connection anymore, and you've got the entire paper with you. Obviously, you can download books, and a few more publications are coming on board. Forbes, a couple of other newspapers. Eventually, lots of stuff will be available in that form, and I think that is the way people will read publications. And I'm relieved because it feels like a publication. It's not webby. And not that webby is a bad thing, but I think webby is bad for the experience of reading a publication. Should I demo this thing?
Yeah, show it to 'em.
Just so,
Also,
for those of you who haven't seen it.
I mean, there was one. The kind of big issue here is storytelling or narrative that Thomas was talking about, which is up till now the online news or online media have been pretty much devoted to quick data, headlines, short bits that you're putting together in your own mind, following sort of your own narrative. Recently, at pointer.org, they figured out that people were actually reading stories. More of a story on the online version than they are in the print version. This study has not been completely released yet, but if you go to pointer.org, you can see the eye track study they just did. You want to interject?
At any point.
Please.
This is working. I'm just interested in, the web was going to come along and paper was going to go away. It was all going to be on the web and everything. And I'm sort of interested in the balance between these are things that actually recreate a print paper experience on the web. And I'm sort of interested in how the balancing is coming out to figuring out that, we can't necessarily retrain ourselves to do things web-wise. Rather, we want to try and morph the web into the way we've learned to do things print-wise. And what's the sort of balance of those designs?
I think you'll do both. I mean, I think there'll be sort of two somewhat separate experiences. I think eventually, what we're doing with the reader and the web, they'll merge. The web will provide a reading experience, and you'll be able to download it. But I think the web will provide everything. It'll remain as a database. It'll remain as a platform for quick bites and jumping around. But it'll also provide publications. It'll include publications like this one. So it'll perform both functions. It's not really a balance. I think there's no reason why technically it can't do everything eventually. And then you'll have both. So when you want to sit and read a book, on your little portable device, you'll get it through the web and you'll read your book. When you want to do research and jump around, you'll do searches through the entire internet.
Yeah.
I think the other piece I was interested in was usability. So what what are the specific aspects of
I'll show you
print
that.
That's like what are the
I'll show you that
specific
in the
things you
demo.
saw that should come over?
Yeah. Okay. So this is the kind of the homepage of the Times Reader. In terms of usability, the stuff it gives you is really simple navigation across the top. We've got all of the sections of the paper, and it's sort of organized by section. And we actually tried to create analogs to the way people actually read the paper, but now we're doing it in a digital form. One way people read the paper is, okay, they just kind of skim through the front page. Well, you can skim through the front page, and then you can read the whole story. In the newspaper here, it's even easier. You just click on the story, and then you can, you're there, and then you can use either your cursor or the down arrow and click through pages of the story. Go back to the home page. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do.
You just clicked on an ad and made Times a little bit of money, though. So.
Yeah.
Oh, it's trying to find the ad.
It does obviously support ads. So and one way people read the newspaper is, skimming through that front page. Another way people read the paper is just they start from the beginning. I'll start from the beginning and just, page through. They just, and this will just page you through the entire paper, one page at a time. You can also skip, instead of paging through each story, you can go from story to story. Here I'm using the horizontal arrow and going from story to story. That's something that's, sort of harder to do in a print world. You can skip around and look at different section fronts. Here's the world, U.S., business. Another way people like to read is to skim headlines. Here, a little arrow next to each label. You've got all the headlines in that section, and you can scan through headlines. What this also gives you, and you just click on the headline and you're there. What this also gives you is, go back to the headline list, is a sense of sort of where you are in terms of reading the publication. Again, with a paper publication, you have a sense of sort of where you are always in that publication because it's a physical object. You know if you're in the middle of the publication or at the end of the publication, you know how much there is left of the publication. I think that's, it's not a necessity, but that's it's a comforting kind of feeling in terms of a publication. It has a beginning and an end. So here, I didn't write down here, you see this sort of represents the bottom, this little graph of all the stories in this section, and I'm kind of on this story, and the grayed out ones are stories I've already read, and you see that, actually this should be, this is still sort of in development, so you've got the actual story headline to the right. It's sort of,
That's new, right?
no, that's
They done that all along?
I don't know. Kevin, you had a version where, there was a version where the headline actually goes right above the story, right? Maybe I have an earlier version. All right, and you can also actually view, you can click on here and you can view all of your, see a sort of representation of the entire paper where you've got these little
bizarre.
boxes in each section and the headlines and the grayed out ones are things I've read. So it gives you this sort of, as best we can, this sort of almost, the sense of a physical object with a beginning and an end and parts that I've read and parts that I haven't read. And again, you can just, click anywhere and go to the story and you're there. Another way people read the paper is, sorry, this is not what I wanted. I'm going to go to this More box and News and Pictures. Some people like to just skim through the paper looking at pictures. That's not what I wanted to do. News and Pictures. And what happens is you can do a slideshow if you want, and it'll just automatically go through one by one. I'm trying to speed it up. You can do it manually and just go through, or you use a button and just go through quickly if you want. Find a picture you like. I'm interested in this story, click on it, you go directly to the story. Again, that's kind of what a reader might do. They skim through the paper, they look at pictures, they find a picture they're interested in, they read the caption, then they read the story. This makes it even easier to do that. What else can we do? We can annotate. Again, you see, it gives you everything that a print publication does, plus more. You can, make notes to yourself. Actually, I've got to, you highlight an area, click on notes. I could create an ink note where I'm just, using my pen to write. Use my nail. It doesn't write, because this is a touch screen, and I'll save the note with so the note always resides with this story. There's my note. And you can, email a story to somebody, you can print it out, you can save it to your own hard drive. So it's a print publication plus the bells and whistles that you get in a digital world. So for the future, there are features that we clearly want to add to this experience to make it even richer. Video is one of them, which we currently don't have, but we could. There are sort of download issues with video. So I think the model would be that you download the newspaper in a minute, you get some representation of video that we're providing in terms of a still image, and then if you want that video, if you're online, you click on it and you get it. If you're offline, it just remembers your request, and the next time you download, you'll download that video. This product, it's also, it takes a feed from the website, so it's updated constantly. So whenever you download, you're getting the latest version of the paper. It's not just, that morning's paper. It's everything from the website.
Hey, Tom,
yeah.
show him a little bit about the type and the resizing of the windows.
Okay, so here, let me get somewhere else so I get rid of this, my note. Okay, the typography it's far superior to anything you get on the web. It's, fully rendered clear type. So what we're using here gives you a much better reading experience because the rendering is a lot cleaner. And it also allows you to go a lot further in terms of branding. What we're using here is, our own typefaces. We have a set of Cheltenham fonts that we use in the New York Times newspaper that we're using here on the reader. So you get that branding. And you can, I'll show you, this thing will size, where's my cursor? There it is. I'm going to reduce reduce it down. It resizes to any size screen and reformats. So if let me get rid of this background. Okay, so if you're looking at a small screen, you know, it reflows the type. If you're on a bigger screen, it'll reflow it and use more space and change the grid to a 2-column grid. This is all, you know, obviously automatic. I go to my full screen, and it reflows the type again. So this will adapt to any size screen, any kind of device. You can also, you can customize the type size. Glare, so I can't really see where I am. Okay, so I'm sort of using, that's big type. I can go smaller, and it'll, again, reformat itself. It brings in a picture because it now has the space for that. Go to a smaller type. And you see the, now I'm on a 4-column grid. You can click on a photograph, and you can enlarge it. Do that with any graphic. Blow it up. So the typographic tools, the composition is pretty sophisticated. Hyphenation, justification.
Do you mind if I wanted to ask you if I work for a magazine publishing company,
Okay.
and obviously artwork in a magazine is very important to the reader experience.
Yeah.
As it is, and I'm sure in some of your sections of the newspaper. How do you see that in the future being translated into a digital environment without there being masses of reproduction, post-production, once the artwork has been designed for the print version?
Well, I think, again, as the technology evolves, you'll have tools. You know, what I'm hoping eventually is that you'll be able to design, you know, for a reader-type device or for the webs with tools that are, you know, close to something like InDesign or Quark.
Yeah, that's a kind of key.
And that you'll be able to do, you know, custom pages. This is, you know, it's a resource issue, but we would like to do that now with sort of our section fronts on the reader, and I think we'll be able to shortly and design, you know, the home page of a section like we do in the newspaper. Right now, it's totally automated. Nobody touches this stuff. It comes right from the feed, but for certain select pages,
All right.
we'll want to design them.
Let's move on with Philippe.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, sure.
I'm a great enthusiast for the reader, but it is Windows only, and I'm sure you get regular emails from, you know, Mac users and the odd Linux users saying this is no use to me. As I understand it, Silverlight is not going to be capable to implement many of the reader features, as I understand it.
Most of the features it will.
Right. Is that the plan? Is it going to be
Yes.
a Silverlight?
Yeah, that it.
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't quite signed off totally, but
We have some papers, I think, that Kevin's got to decide right now.
I'm pretty sure we'll provide a Times reader on Silverlight for the Mac.
Can you give me any idea of the timescale of that? Would that have to wait for the 1.1 Silverlight, or?
No, I don't think so. Kevin, can you? It's probably a matter of months.
Yeah.
You know, there's a certain amount of development that either Microsoft or we have to do. I think that's the question now: who does that development work? The Times isn't really set up to do massive amounts of development.
And the other question I had was about Adobe PDF. I mean, that appeared to be the solution for print publications that you could download. Why didn't you go for PDF rather than Reader?
PDFs, because you can't, you know, there's no reflowing. They're really limited. We have a product that relies on PDFs. It's called the Electronic New York Times, and it presents, you know, the full page of the Times. But to read anything, you have to scan it. It's just impractical.
And this can update. The big issues, I think, that for me, that the Times Reader offers is the type, and that it does become a Silverlight issue, which is not completely cleared up. In any case, even if you had ClearType in Silverlight, ClearType is optimized for the Windows display, and it's not going to work on the Mac. So you would have to figure out what would be the optimum way of being cross-platform with the typography. Design control, the narrative, the dynamic flow of the copy coming in, of the assets coming in. This is what transforms this experience. Why it's not like a typical, like a commerce site. The Nike site that some of us saw yesterday is very cool, but there's maybe, 1,000 products at once that just sit there in a database. The New York Times database is just churning constantly, and the material and the files are getting richer and heavier. this is a client. I mean, the notion that, the discussion of web versus online is kind of interesting. Web becomes a carrier, but we've been using lots of clients, particularly video and Flash, that have overwhelmed what the actual HTML is. So this is simply, I think Tom is totally right about suggesting that this may be carried along with the web, but it's going to be its own thing. So now Philippe is going to answer those last two questions, right?
Well, partially. Is my mic on? Can we hear? Everybody hear me all right? So essentially, Roger and I have been working with, there's this magazine called Reporte Indigo out of Mexico. And they already currently publish a very rich media-based Flash publication that has video and so forth. And we kind of started from that point and looked at envisioning what the next realm of readers, and especially readers in a different type of genre that's not quite newspapers, but magazines, which have different design schedules and different publication schedules, which means they have more flexibility and different options. So this is just, I'll hesitate even to call it a demo. It's a set of sketches, essentially, of what we might think that the types of things that you might see. So first of all, this front page cover is much like a magazine cover, actually explicitly designed. It's much more visual, but you've got an idea of there's an actual editor behind here, choosing the priority of the stories, but doing so also in, just like all the demos we're seeing, in a way where you can take it and scale it to different sizes. Right now I'm just increasing the zoom. The same thing will happen in terms of changing the page size, where we can still get that rich adaptability and being able to fill the screen. But the point is this, currently what you're seeing in the Times Reader, because it's early and because of their different types of publication schedules, is you're not getting as much variety in these individual pages. And I think what you're going to see in terms of magazines as we move more and more of the workflow online, you'll start translating more and more of that design to the online space. Because eventually, let's be honest, we're going to stop actually getting physical copies of these a lot of times, and you already have designers actually working on the design there. It's just a matter of translating them, retraining them, and getting them to understand how to design in this more fluent medium. So I can page through here, and again, the idea is that it's much more visual. It's a different type of experience, and this is really their brand. I'm not saying this is right for, it would never be right for the New York Times, but for Reporte Indigo, this is their style. It's a very political-oriented magazine, very visual, and these are the types of stories and the type of experience they have. So they do already produce a lot of video. This is us showing one of their existing videos. With each of their articles, their feature articles, they have an in-depth, real, meaty piece of 5 to 10 minutes of video that go along with the story and are meant to actually complement it. I won't make you sit through and watch it, but
it's in Spanish.
And the same, I think you're going to start seeing richer and richer ads. So, here's a little preview, and, you go ahead and
At
click.
Geico.com, you can handle all your car insurance needs online.
You see the same type of mini site that you've seen in some other demos before. But I think, you'll see, and you start to see this on a couple sites now, richer interaction with these ads. So on this page, you'll see other users can leave comments about the ads, rate the ads, see more ads by that company, and get richer information. I think this is the direction that you're going to see things going, because it really brings value to the advertisers and then value to the publication as well to get that type of interaction. And another page here, again, getting the rich comments on the actual articles. And I like the idea of being able to also pivot and navigate based along the author's other articles that they've gone through. Because currently, many of the stories are either narrative or by section, but oftentimes you might enjoy a certain author's writing, and it's a different way to go through and discover things. And actually, this is one of my favorite things about the New York Times, the website. It's not in the reader yet, but I love the most emailed and most popular pages. It's actually a really interesting way to find articles that I would never actually find in myself, and I think you'll see more and more of that. This Dig, Reddit, and all these other sites have really pioneered the community-driven features of content. But you can take that, again, it's just a matter of associating a few designs with an article, and you can create attractive pages that in the end are in some way user-generated, right? So this is an algorithmic list of the most popular content in the actual magazine. And similarly, you can even have the same for ads. Now, imagine an advertiser that didn't spend much on their budget, but publishes a good ad can end up getting highlighted here. And the difference is, especially with fashion magazines, a lot of times the ads are the content. And you've got a lot of advertisers that have yet to enter the digital realm because they're not able to replicate the same sophistication and brand experience that they get in print. So I think Chanel and Gucci are examples, right, Roger, where they do zero web advertising today, like absolutely zero. And these are big customers in the print world. We need a vehicle in order to bring them into the digital marketplace. And I think you're going to see these richer and richer clients, be the WPF, be it Silverlight, be it Flash, anything. The point is we need to raise the content and raise the experience to a level of sophistication that we can bring these actual clients back on there. So I think these are, again, like I said, just some sketches of, I think, the direction we're going, but more visual, highly designed, but still flexible.
Great. Well, Reporte Indigo is, and you can download the Flash client at reporteindigo.com, and it is, it's a Mexican weekly. But what this is indicating is we're contemplating bringing it out of the U.S. as a kind of Latin sphere culture, trade, and political magazine, and I think it's going to happen. Whether it's on Silverlight or Flash remains to be seen. That's going to be the big bake-off of the near future. There are some things that we can do in Silverlight or in WPF that are very, very compelling. And the things that I like, the type still becomes an important part. The web in terms of data now is getting overrun with YouTube in the video rush, but in terms of pages, most of the web is made up of text. Most of what people do on the web is read in terms of time. And so we got to improve that experience. Microsoft is much of the design community unaware, a leader in trying to understand how people read on the screen. And they've done a lot of research, and the ClearType effort is a major, important effort. And I think that kind of the text narrative experience and this kind of thing also becomes key. Philippe didn't really show that many pages going down, but there are 1,500 word articles under some of these pictures, and they can be presented the same way the Times does, in a very clear, simple way that you can read it. And as I mentioned at Pointer, they're finding people really are reading. And Microsoft has data too that shows that the amount of time people spend looking at the screen now has increased because the screens are easier to look at and the text is getting better. I think this branded experience that Philippe is talking about becomes, for advertising, the killer app for this kind of news or media content client. That is, they can get their, like that little Geico sketch that we showed there, it can be part of their campaign, but they can also invite the customers in, get comments, and people can get some ownership of the brand in a way that they can't do on television. Which heretofore has been the best way for people to build brand. And I think that alone could be the operating principle that makes this thing work financially. That, I think, kind of sums up our basic approach here. Do you all have any other comments or questions that we need to
I think
ask?
the big thing to answer one of the earliest questions we were talking about, the relationship between paper and the web and what we see here. And I think they haven't figured out the right user model for it. In the end, both in terms of capabilities and in terms of what these machines can do and what the technology can do, we're still kind of in the horse and buggy whip phase, even though the cars are already out there. We're still trying to replicate a lot of what you do in paper and a lot of the metaphors that don't necessarily make sense when you have something that's dynamic like a screen. And I think there's been some interesting essays and talks of how to get towards that place, but I think there's still a lot of room and a lot of room for innovation in terms of harnessing that and kind of losing some of our bias towards metaphors that work in the print world that don't necessarily work in the digital world.
Well, I think that the pushback. I follow the WPF and particularly the New York Times Reader pretty carefully on the web, and the blogs and the reviews, and then the comments about it. And there's an enormous number of positive reviews and blog items about the New York Times Reader when it came out, and then the comments were typically 90% negative. Of course, all blog comments are 90% negative, but the thing is that the point was these are kind of dead pixels. It's another download. It's Zinio. It's the stupid Sony Reader. People had all kinds of things saying that why do you want this? This is, just a newspaper on the screen. What is it giving me? And some of that was in its early days, and not a complete understanding of how dynamic the Times is. I don't know what the
It's every 10
push rate.
minutes.
Every 10 minutes, you can, and actually you're pulling it, but you can set it up on your preferences on the reader to get a refresh that frequently, or every time you go online. The enormous advantage over a website is that you then can carry the thing on the airplane or in the commuter train or off into the country or someplace where you just don't feel like being online or their connection is not good. And at the same time, the Times Reader doesn't have what I call the online state. There are not a lot of links in there. There are some.
Well, there are a lot of links.
But you don't really feel you don't feel like you're online for some reason, and I think that has to be enhanced. The idea of being able to comment. The Times actually is just experimenting with that in their blogs and in this new local section called City Room. I believe is going to be very bloggy, comment. Almost citizen journalism will start coming in there, which is like a frightening concept at the New York Times. But it's actually, I don't know if anybody heard the panel yesterday or 2 days ago about citizen journalism. It's a very interesting conversation. I mean, one of the problems that the established media have in terms of moving to digital is that they have become as institutions. There's a definition of what they are doing that they learned in journalism school, or that it's almost a religious conviction about, we know and you don't. But it didn't always used to be that way. I mean, it wasn't always that way. For example, if you go back just 100 years, 75 years in the newspaper history, in the United States, newspapers started being read pretty faithfully about the time of the Civil War. The 1850s. The Lincoln election was heavily covered by newspapers. The newspapers were passed around, and people seriously read them. But the newspapers, when they became really mass media that were cheap, and they were the only news medium in the period from 1895 to the First World War, were some of the most exciting media products ever invented. If you go back and look at Hearst and Pulitzer's papers from that era, they invented color. All the technology was behind them, linotype, rotary presses, and so forth. And they didn't know what they were doing. They were just kind of making it up. And, of course, they were making up some of the news, which later they decided was not such a good idea. But it's worth going back and looking at the New York World in 1915 or the New York Journal. Those are exciting products. And I think that in this environment, we might start experimenting again, too. I mean, this line between citizen journalism, the line between what's professional and what's not, is going to get a little murkier, and maybe we can have more fun with it.
We've talked a lot about the layout and how people are viewing the information online, but some of the articles I've seen around how people find articles online via search engines, and what is that doing not to the visuals so much, but to the language, and how is that impacting your reporters? Because I look at a lot of the headlines, and they're very self-explanatory. And is that something that we're seeing in this area, and will that be web-centric only, or will that also go back and hit the print editions when you try to change the language to be a bit more obvious?
So actually, at the Times, what we're doing right now is in certain sections, not all yet because of the resource issues, but we're writing 2 sets of headlines. You're right. We write headlines for the web that are much more literal in order to be more effective for search. But that really is primarily, for search. And in the print world, that's not really an issue, never will be. So I'm not sure it'll feed back into the print world necessarily.
Unless it's a resource issue, you don't have time to write 2.
That's true. If you don't have time to write 2, then maybe the web will run out and win out, and we'll write one headline that'll end up.
This is my local hometown paper.
Well, another thing that you're talking, the search question gets very interesting in this kind of product, because how searchable is it? Remember how long it took Flash to figure out how to deal with search. And the search, there has to be some meta version of these clients that are already searchable, or you'll go offline too fast. But to answer your question, I think that's great. I think basically, if you write more obviously, if you tell the story in the headline, you then you make it easier for the people who are, everyone's stressed for time. Nobody has time to like read a teaser headline and then go to page A78 and see what the answer is. I mean, what is this, a game?
Well, but it's partly what gives a publication its character, and you don't want to strip all of that away.
Well, yeah, and you want to have, of course, you don't have puns, but you want to have some fun with
Yeah.
it, with it too.
And there's a balance. Well, I want to comment on something you said before. When we developed the reader, and this, this is, we did it in 6 months basically. It's brand new, and it needs a whole lot more work, and it's gonna evolve a lot. But the sort of the initial goal was sort of to create an anti-web thing. And we kind of focused on not the web-like features that we could give it, but these sort of more narrative reader-like features. But I think now that we've done that, the next stage is to then overlay that with more web online features. I mean, ultimately, it should actually function just like a full functioning browser, and give you all of that. So I keep I see it as a layered experience. You can have this reading experience, but then on top of that, you can have the community experience and the interactive experience that you have on the web. That's sort of the next step in my opinion. We sort of deliberately focused on the more traditional reading experience part of it, just to sort of contrast with the web.
And it becomes a modal thing. I think that what Tom was saying, that this is not necessarily going to take the place of the website. It's sort of a companion to the website, and maybe at some point, rich media and this kind of templated design helps the web get better in terms of like those long. I mean, the worst thing about the web right now are the really wide columns where you have to read all the way across in this tiny type, and this thing solves immediate. You can solve that immediately using this kind of reader, but. My thinking is that the world gets very modal. People do different things at different times because they have different reasons. Sometimes I get to the New York Times by Google, and I just find that they covered it. And sometimes I'm doing a more active search within the New York Times, and sometimes I'm browsing. And the Pointer study showed there are two basic mindsets in newspaper reading and online news reading. And they called one of them methodical. The people who make sure they got it all and go through every section and look at the indexes. The kind of what I used to call in magazines table of contents people. And the other they call scanners, which is what we thought the web was creating. We thought the web was turning everybody into a scanner all of the time. But actually, human nature doesn't change. I think we've always been sometimes methodical and sometimes scanners, and of course different personality types fall more in one camp than the other. But you really need in the media world to create products that are addressing both. Sometimes that are very organized, easy to find, or are a really fun, immersive experience that could be very rich and deep. Yes.
Good morning. I'm working in Greece. I'm a software development manager for Dhol. It's the biggest group media in Greece. And we have applied the SDK to all our newspapers, like the Time Reader said. Okay? We discovered some problems, let's say, compared to the web. The first thing that you just have articles. You don't have any other entity types like sub-articles. Okay? That's the first thing. So I think that this experience must evolve to something more brighter. Okay, because you have the sub-articles or you have the collection of articles to build a virtual space, like a study about environmental changes. So this doesn't support it. Another thing is absolute position. Sometimes in articles you do need it because there is a lot of different semantics if you put this piece where it belongs, and that doesn't support it. The web supports it. Another thing is a different scale of photographs. You just don't have the need to have just one scale. You need more. What else? That's basic aid. Okay.
Some of those are actually available.
Yeah.
You can have different scale photographs. I think the point that resonates with me most that you made is this the difficulty in packaging
that's a problem.
related stories. And again, I think we can achieve that. I think we just need, it's a design challenge. I think the software actually will allow you to do that. We just have to figure out way to do that from a design sense. And I think the problem is not the software as much as just the size of the screen that you're looking at. In a newspaper or a broadsheet newspaper, or even in a tabloid, you can put several stories on the same page and draw relationships between those stories that way. On a smaller image, you got to be more creative about creating those adjacencies and those connections. And I think we can do that. We just need to keep working at it.
Well, this page that's on the screen now takes some of that into account. It is live data coming in by the scores of what it's working with, some kind of templates that are populating the headlines and the pictures. But then there's somebody has actually just checked that carbon is the big story and make sure that they have enough text for that.
And a lot of this is a new medium, right? You're not going to be able to translate everything that is on the newspaper because fundamentally they're very, very different. And I think I find it personally a very fascinating challenge, but is to find what works in this new medium and this new display surface. So perhaps it doesn't become like, laying out a bunch of related articles on the same page, because that's just not something you're going to be able to fit on the page. And there's different ways to storytell, right? Books are a different form factor, and they tell a different type of story, but they're still very valuable.
I think that it's interesting, though, the multiple image layouts or multiple article layouts, packages or whatever, and the New York Times front page, I still like to see that every day. And if I'm not in New York, I will look at their PDF picture or go to Newseum, which has all the front pages from around the world, or many of them, in high resolution, and you can read the front page. And the thing is that the New York Times editors choose the importance of the stories and lay them out in a kind of information graphic that Tom has a lot to do with every day, or used to. And it's a signal. It's a way of seeing, oh, this is very important, or this also is kind of important. Or look at this odd thing that they figured out about, that's a cultural story, a social story. That arrangement is very difficult to do on the web currently, or on any kind of online media, but I think you can start approximating it. The problem with the reader, in my mind, is not, from a design point of view, is that it really is coming from the e-book idea. It captures a big feed of text and pictures coming into it in XML, and then splays them out into these templates. Now, in a weekly, you don't have quite the same fire hose of data coming into the product, but you could do more templates. And I think that combination of how you handle the flow of data and the changeability of things and the ranking according to templates. You can't do this by algorithm. I remember when the LATimes.com redesigned, I think it was the old Razorfish did it, and they decided they were going to put rank the stories on the page according to some fields in the database and then some rules that they made. And it didn't work. The wrong stories were at the top of the page a lot. You need editors.
The technology is just not quite there yet to do everything and make it look good. Think of them like cyborgs, human-machine combinations, where you've got still the human intelligence there, but the machine's able to do a lot of the work. And I think that's what you're going to see more and more, because it's really tough. Like, if you look at the types of things that real print designers do, they do some fairly complex logic. Like, I actually, when I was back at Microsoft, we used to talk to some of them, and we'd ask them questions like, okay, you're laying out text in 3 columns, and you have, I don't know, 2 sentences left over. And, do you create a new page? What do you do? And some of them would say, well, I'd edit the text. I'd delete a sentence. These very complex operations that, honestly, machines aren't going to be able to do for quite a while. So I think you end up in, obviously, like, the very best and the most attractive designs are going to be done purely in a human way. Like, the machines just aren't quite there yet. But you can get a lot of mileage by moving a bit over to the other side of the spectrum. Give the machine a bit of control, but you still have the human there giving guidance, essentially. And I think that'll be really valuable, and that's what you'll see more and more. And you already see that in the Times Reader. Those front page templates, what you see in the layout in the articles, there's there was a lot of human guidance and hinting behind that, but in the end it's fully algorithmic, which is exactly what you have to do when you have the actual amount of content that the Times has per day. You don't have the time to have a human go through all that.
Well,
They do.
yeah, I mean, yeah, we do. We don't have we don't have the time
For
to have
all
a
the
human-
different screen sizes and all the different zoom sizes.
No,
Yeah.
you have to find a balance.
Yeah.
But I think maybe we need to find ways to. I think we shouldn't give up on the idea of some of the sort of basic things that the newspaper does. That I think we should try to find analogs in the digital world.
I agree.
A hierarchy of stories, and we try to do that. We actually have editors on the web giving a hierarchy to every story that goes out.
And you changed, you can have a banner headline on the website.
Yeah, but it's just
like
sort of limited. The front page that I showed you on the reader, I'd like to develop from a design standpoint. Right now it has like a hierarchy of 3 different levels. I'd like to have more levels on it, and maybe and that involves more templates.
So I agree completely. But what you see in a lot of, especially a lot of developer mindsets, is their first instinct is to automate everything and have it be purely algorithmic. I guess I'm kind of speaking from the other side of saying, look, we need to move this way.
That's interesting. The designers are arguing for more technology, and the programmers are arguing for more design.
Could I ask what you
not
feel
all
about?
programmers.
Oh, sorry. Could I ask what you feel about personalisation? I mean, you go to Amazon and you get the things that are like the things you bought previously. It seems to me that in journalism this is both quite appealing because you could make publication more the kind of thing that your reader wants to read, but also quite dangerous because it enables the reader to shut out the things that they're not interested in that perhaps they should be or should be made aware of. Is this something that you are looking at?
Yeah, we're thinking about that. Again, it's finding the right balance or offering both to people. Right now the reader does not offer a whole lot of personalization, so you kind of get everything. And you have this, it's the serendipitous experience that you want people to have. They don't know they're interested in this subject until you present them with this subject in a certain way. At the same time, we don't want to, people don't have a lot of time, and so we do want to offer them tools to customize, maybe customize the syncing so that they, just get the sections that they're interested in, they skip the other sections, to customize the front page with the stuff that they're most interested in on top. Both. I don't have an answer. They're both useful. And again, like everything else, I want to give them both.
But you could also, you could also blend that by allowing, I define news as random, interesting stuff that you didn't expect to hear about. I could probably say it better than that. But in any case, that's news for me. And research doesn't usually find news. News you have to stumble across. So, but you could still skin this thing in different flavors, and you could so that there would be people would feel more comfortable with it, and you could have a kind of Tory edition that was very starchy, Cheltenham-y, and then you could have another edition that was a little bit more like the magazine, but still New York Times brand.
One way to do that to satisfy both desires is to present, you customize your front page with the stuff you're interested in. And then also give them the most email list or something like that, which presents the serendipitous experience.
Or editor's choice.
Or editor's a bunch of things like that.
You showed the search functionality.
Yeah, you want me to show it now?
Related stories.
Yeah, there's kind of a cool search.
I keep thinking about the template issue, that and trying to do a rich magazine. That becomes the key, and I think that you could have personalized templates.
I'm doing search through search for something where they come up a lot.
Rupert Murdoch.
This is a relevance view of the Bush search. So you see by sort of the size of the boxes is there the degree of relevancy to that search. You can also do just a straight list view. We list all the stories that reference Bush, and you can do this cool kind of topic explorer that shows the relationships between pieces. So here you've got stuff that here you're coming off the Bush, and then you can click on one of these, and then that becomes a center of your something like that. And that becomes your center. This story and related stories come off of that. We just keep going.
Neat.
So it's a pretty powerful search, although it's still not perfect. It's being developed. And of course, you can just click on a story.
Yeah.
You consider, rather than search, like an unsearch, like you're saying, you really want the editors to be helping you in what you want to see. But I'm not interested in the sport, and I'm not interested in what Britney Spears is doing today. So if you just filter all that out so the content becomes more valuable because you cut out those areas of the world you're not interested in, then you still have that ability to kind of edit it and drive key things. That way you don't miss things. Whereas search, of course, you're not searching for the right things. Obviously, that helps with it because you find out half the thing they will see a little more.
Search
Did
is
y'all hear?
a huge field for development.
The comment was, what about unsearch? Could you essentially filter search so that it didn't give you results that you, like Britney Spears, that you weren't particularly interested in, or vice versa? I mean, people have been working on this whole idea of since the notion of collaborative filtering, of having the search engine know you better, or have the website know you better by your behavior, which always scares the hell out of the kind of consumer lobbyists. But if it was all anonymous data, or if it wasn't passed along, it could be really extremely useful if the New York Times Reader or the New York Times website started understanding what you really were interested in. And we see that in the commerce world, like Amazon, it's very effective, or sometimes effective. Netflix, where it's suggesting stuff that actually often works. Yes.
Hi. I probably should be able to answer this question, but
Let me just answer. This is Nick Thusen, who actually did much of the development of the Times Reader.
yeah, again, so maybe I should be able to answer this. But so I often wonder, like it's very easy for you guys to say, have this concept of print publication, magazine publication, because you grew up reading newspapers, you grew up reading magazines. And now we have a bunch of people entering the business world who grew up on websites, RSS, aggregation. How strong is branding in the sense that, like, I can go and build, something that will lay out text like this that just reads RSS, right? Like, in fact, somebody did once. I've seen it, has the same layout, the same text. So you get that quality of text medium layout, excuse me. But everything I get is going to be that way. And I don't need this reader thing, and I don't need the New York Times branding, and I just get it all. Just shove it in my face, all the news, all the thing. So at what point is branding enough? Like, why would I need the crazy layout magazine and everything when I just consume it all in one space? And I want it. And they don't expect newspapers, I've never personally bought a newspaper. I work at the New York Times. I've never bought a newspaper, and I don't think I ever will. So
Well, wait till a war breaks out. You may change your mind.
Yeah. But how strong is branding to bring people back to your world?
So part of what you were saying was just the fact that essentially this layout can be replicated, right? And that given this new technology, we're kind of in, every time, at least, as a child born in the 1950s or whenever I was born, new technology comes out and you see, the first time gradients are possible, or the first time you can add a drop shadow to text, that's all you see for like the next year or two. And I kind of wonder if that's part of what we're seeing now in terms of these same types of layouts, and you're essentially getting a weaker branding because you're seeing other things that look like this, right?
You mean that all the websites look alike?
But I think what Nick was asking was something,
More fundamental.
broader than, more fundamental than that is, do we care if it's New York Times product? I just want the news poured, or I want as much information poured, my way as possible. And I don't really care who's editing it or what the source is. And I'll figure it out. I'll figure out whether I'm interested in this stuff or not, just by nature of its content. It's a great question. I struggle with that. You're right. I'm of a generation that grew up reading newspapers, and new generation hasn't grown up reading newspapers necessarily. But I still believe that there's some value in the authority of a well-edited publication.
And you already see this digitally. Like, there's very popular blogs that, even though that content can come from anywhere, people still go and read Boing Boing or TechCrunch or whatever else. Content's available otherwise, but they still go to these sites.
And I still think, it's kind of become a cliche, and maybe, Nick, you've got the mind that can absorb stuff. But there's so much content available now that I want someone to do a little bit of selecting for me. I just can't figure out, of that huge volume of stuff that I have access to, which of it do I want to read, which of it should I believe, which of it should I question. And I think people will, even more so in the future, want some kind of guidance. And the authority of a publisher or the sensibility of a publisher can be very helpful. And people will desire that.
I think that it's the modal thing too. I think sometimes I just want it all. And I particularly get the feeling that the news media, like at the time of the Iraq invasion, wasn't telling us the whole story. And therefore I really want stuff from outside my usual sources. Some people would criticize the New York Times at that period a lot because it was buying the government's line. What's the not the government's line? I also like the notion of having your own templates that you can read things in. That would be better than just the kind of raw HTML that's coming from RSS. Typically when you do RSS or you go to a link and you get their page or whatever, it's just kind of random. Or you're sucking it out and putting it into a RSS reader. The thing is, you could make it look nice, or you could choose a nice one and put it in that. I remember in the early tech days, there were tech boom days in the mid-'90s, Wired magazine came out. And I was infuriated. I was interested in the magazine, but I was infuriated with the layout because it was so layered and the type was so small and colored and the backgrounds were too heavy. And so I went to the website and sucked the text out of it and put it in my own templates and printed it out on a laser printer. And it looked great.
There's another branding
and I enjoyed it much more.
That I think that this brings up, and that's just a commercial issue. If you sort of get rid of all branding, where is the money to do this reporting going to come from? That's a problem. I mean, right? Bloggers do not report a whole lot. They're not in Darfur, telling you what's going on, or in Iraq telling you what's going on.
Or even in Washington.
You need these news organizations to do that, and it costs a whole lot of money. And without branding, how are they going to, get reimbursed for that work?
Yeah, in the newspaper world, one of the interesting things is no website now is paying for the newsroom. And so when does that happen? When do we get enough? When do we get enough revenue from the website to get 3
minutes, so let's get it.
Yeah, we're going to go over.
Actually, the New York Times does have a premium service, so they are getting paid. But this brings up an interesting question. The New York Times, The New York Times does have a premium service. You can't read all the articles for free.
That pays for about 1/10 of the newsroom cost.
But my question is really right. My question is really.
Doesn't even pay for that.
And the New York Times is a particular case. It's not just a newspaper. It is a special newspaper, and maybe that's what you're not seeing. And I think there is a movement. There's a convergence here between community and branding. When I see that type, I know exactly what I'm getting. I know from my childhood that's what, I know the Times, I know the journalists, I know the quality, and I know the bias. So it tells me a lot when I see that type. It communicates a lot. But when you go on the web and you're opening up to the community, the demographics change. And is that enhancing the brand, or is that actually diluting the brand where you could no longer have that? The community is so big, but they may not have the background or the historical feeling for that particular brand.
I think we still have, the community still has certain common standards and principles and interests. It's broader, certainly, but that's a good thing. But I think there's still a certain sensibility within that community that is common throughout, and that's what we hope makes it appealing to be a part of that community. Broadening it is good.
Well, the other thing is that you get some two-way communication going. And the New York Times is one of those places where the readers are often as smart as the reporters, in which case they may have very interesting comments. And I'm actually interested in hearing what they have to say, like the letters page of the New York Times.
I usually go there first.
How many times have you written a letter to the New York Times that didn't get printed in? And you were sort of nettled, but then when you read the page, you realize they probably get a lot. And online, there could be many more. When I was at Newsweek, I used to wonder about the files. Newsweek is the old kind of rewrite system where where there's reporters sending in files, and then there's rewrite people or researchers who turn them into articles. And the files, if you work inside, are fascinating because there's this enormous amount of stuff coming in. But it hasn't been fact-checked, and we couldn't print it. And I think increasingly news organizations will get much more personal. That's why they're allowing blogs. And then if you get the readers going back the other way, then everybody gets a little more alert, and it's more of a conversation than just sitting up and preaching.
We do something that's sort of antithetical to the web, but we actually edit comments. So it's kind of it's different kind of comment.
Any more questions? I think we could squeeze another one in. We did it. All right. It's very nice. Thanks for coming.